At 3:07 a.m., I watched a tow truck back up into my driveway like it owned the place chain, clinking in the dark lights off like we were all pretending this was normal. 2 minutes later, the HOA president called 911 on me for blocking the tow truck from stealing my own vehicle. And when the responding officer said, "Morning, Chief," her face did this slow, perfect collapse I'll never forget. My name's Ethan Cole, and yeah, I'm the police chief for Maplewood County. I'm not the guy who looks for drama, and I definitely don't go home hoping to argue about lawn height and paint colors. I live in a quiet little pocket called Cedar Glen, the kind of neighborhood where people wave with one hand and hold a measuring tape in the other. It's under a homeowners association, and until recently the HOA was background noise emails, newsletters, please remember trash bins by 6 p.m. stuff. Then Madeline Grayson got elected president. Madeline was the kind of woman who wore a white blazer like it was body armor, always smiling, always polite, always talking like every sentence came with a fine attached. The first time she approached me, she didn't say hi. She looked past me straight at my old Bronco in the driveway and said, "That needs to be moved. It's not in keeping with community standards." I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. The Bronco wasn't pretty, but it was mine paid off running, sitting on my property behind my mailbox, not blocking anyone. Madeline didn't laugh back. She lifted a laminated sheet like she was presenting evidence in court. Section 4.3. Unsightly vehicles must be stored in a garage. If not, the HOA will take corrective action. I said, "It's in my driveway." Calm voice, normal words like that would matter. She smiled wider. "Driveways are part of the overall street view, Ethan. This affects everyone." That was the moment I realized this wasn't about the Bronco. It was about control and the thrill of watching someone comply. Over the next week, the violations started showing up like clockwork. Not one, not two. A stack paint chips, improper storage, unapproved exterior appearance. Even my backyard tree dropping leaves in an excessive manner. Leaves. In fall. I kept thinking, okay, she's new, she's trying to look tough, let it burn out, I've dealt with worse than paperwork. Then she escalated from emails to my front yard. One morning I stepped outside and found Madeline on my grass with a clipboard heels digging little dents into the soil. She didn't look guilty, she looked comfortable, like she belonged there. "You can't be here," I told her. She didn't move. "I'm documenting non-compliance." I pointed toward the driveway. "This isn't common area, this is my property." She tilted her head. "If you're part of Cedar Glen, you're subject to Cedar Glen." The next sentence out of her mouth was, "If you don't move the vehicle today, I'll call the police." I stared at her for a second because the irony was so thick I could have paved the street with it. Then I said, "Go ahead. Call 911. Let's get it on record." She did. Of course she did. A patrol unit rolled up and the officer, young guy, good kid, stepped out and froze for half a beat when he saw me. "Morning, Chief." Madeline's smile cracked. Not fully, just enough. She did this quick little scan of his uniform like she was looking for a refund. "I need him removed," she snapped, pointing at my Bronco like it was a bomb. "He's violating the rules. He's intimidating me." The officer looked at the driveway, then at me, then back at her. "Ma'am, that's his driveway." Madeline's cheeks went tight. "The HOA says," the officer cut in, still polite. "The HOA doesn't override property law." Madeline turned to me and hissed low enough she thought the body cam wouldn't catch it. "This isn't over." And that's when I started keeping receipts. I made a simple log date time. What happened? Photos, screenshots, certified mail, tracking numbers. Nothing dramatic, just a paper trail because I've learned the hard way that people like Madeline live off confusion. For a couple days it got quiet, the kind of quiet that's never actually quiet. Then the certified letters started arriving. Not reminders, threats. One letter demanded I remove my fence because it was supposedly encroaching by 4 inches. Another warned of fines for non-compliant storage. The language was aggressive, like they were daring me to blink. Madeline even hired some guy with a measuring wheel to stand at my property line and act like he was doing a federal survey. I pulled out my county-stamped plat and the official survey. He looked at it, sighed, and said, "Sir, you're right." 2 days later, Madeline sent another letter anyway. Then the small sabotage began. I replaced a few sprinkler heads. The next morning, 3 of them were snapped clean off like someone twisted them for fun. I found muddy prints near the flower bed, and the timing was convenient. When I asked Madeline about it, she gave me this soft shrug, the kind people do when they know they'll never be held accountable. Maybe the landscaping crew stepped on them, she said. Accidents happen. Right, accidents. That only happen after midnight, only on my side of the fence. Meanwhile, she went online. Cedar Glen had a private neighborhood group, and suddenly there were posts about authority figures abusing power, about residents feeling unsafe, about someone using their job to intimidate the board. No names, just enough detail that anyone with eyes knew it was me. And I couldn't clap back without looking like I was proving her point. I'll be honest, that part got under my skin. Not because I'm fragile, but because it's exhausting watching someone weaponize the idea of rules to smear you while you're stuck playing by actual rules. There was one night I sat at my kitchen table with that growing binder, and I caught myself thinking something I didn't like. Maybe it's not worth it. Maybe I sell the place and let her win just to get my peace back. Then I looked around at the house. My mom's old photos, the dent in the hallway wall from when I moved in, a couch. The porch light I fixed with my own hands, and I felt that hard, steady anger settle in. No, I'm not getting pushed out of my own home by a woman with a blazer and a clipboard. The turning point came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Harper Lane, late 60s, lived 2 houses down. Quiet, friendly, the type who bakes cookies and somehow knows everyone's business without ever looking nosy. She knocked on my door one afternoon and said, "Ethan, I don't want to get involved, but you should know something." I invited her in, and she leaned in like she was handing me classified info. "I overheard Madeline at the open house last weekend," she said. "She was bragging. She said if she cleans up the neighborhood image, she can flip her place for a higher number. She called you a problem she has to solve." That's when it clicked. This wasn't personal because of my Bronco. It was personal because I wasn't easy to bully, and I was in the way of her little real estate play. 2 nights later, I got my proof delivered straight to my driveway at 3 a.m. I woke up to a low engine rumble and that metallic chain sound. I looked out the window and saw a tow truck backing up toward my Bronco with the lights off. No warning, no knock, just stealing quietly like the dark would make it legal. I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my phone, and went outside. "Hey," I yelled, "what the hell are you doing?" The driver jumped like he didn't expect anyone to be awake. "I got a work order," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. "Show it to me," I said, walking up, keeping my distance, recording everything. He handed me a sheet with a HOA header and Madeline's signature like it was a badge. "Enforcement tow," it said. "On private property. My private property." I stepped in front of the Bronco. "You're not towing anything from this driveway." The driver hesitated. "Ma'am said." Before he could finish, Madeline's voice cut through the night from the sidewalk. "Ethan, move out of the way. You're interfering with authorized enforcement." She looked thrilled, like this was her big finale. I said, "Madeline, you can't tow a vehicle from my driveway. You know that." She pulled out her phone like a quick draw. "Then I'll call 911. You're obstructing." "Do it," I said. "Again. Let's do another report." She did, and this time she paced back and forth loud enough for the dispatcher to hear. "He's threatening me. He's aggressive. He's blocking the tow. I'm afraid." I stood there in the cold hands visible phone recording while she performed her little scene. A unit arrived fast because 911 calls do that. The officer stepped out, saw me, and his eyebrows went up. "Chief?" Madeline's face, again. That same slow collapse. She snapped, "Arrest him. He's obstructing HOA enforcement." The officer glanced at the tow truck, then at my Bronco, then at my driveway. "Ma'am, that's his property." Madeline's smile turned sharp. "The HOA has authority here. He's not special." I kept my voice low. "Officer, I'd like this documented as an attempted theft from private property under a fraudulent pretense. Also, I have the last 10 notices, the posts, and the certified letters logged." Madeline laughed like I was bluffing. "You don't scare me with paperwork." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just let her keep talking while the body cams rolled and my phone kept recording. Because by then, I wasn't trying to win an argument. I was building a case. Over the next week, I pulled public records, cross-checked names, matched signatures, and handed everything to the right people quietly. Not as revenge, as procedure. Then came the HOA meeting. Packed room, folding chairs, cheap coffee, residents murmuring like it was community theater. Madeline stood at the front with a little slideshow about compliance and safety, and she kept dropping hints that I was a threat. She looked right at me and said, "Some people think their position puts them above the rules." I stood up slowly, binder in my hand, and said, "Madeline, you've been using the HOA to harass homeowners, falsify enforcement actions, and attempt to remove property you have no legal control over. I've submitted all documentation to investigators." The room went dead quiet. Madeline scoffed. "This is ridiculous. You're making things up because you don't like being told no." And right then, the door opened. Two investigators walked in plainclothes calm. One of them flashed credentials, the other held a folder. Madeline's mouth opened, and for the first time since I met her, no words came out. The investigator said her name, full name, like a period at the end of a sentence. He read the charges in a steady voice: fraud, false statements, coordinated harassment through an organization, and an unlawful tow scheme tied to financial motives. Madeline tried to step back, tried to laugh it off, tried to act like this was all a misunderstanding. But her hands started shaking when the cuffs came out. She looked at me like I'd betrayed her, like I owed her silence. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just watched the HOA president get walked out of that room, blazer, still perfect power, completely gone. And the only thing I thought was, it shouldn't take a badge to make someone respect your front door. Lesson: never let a bully hide behind the rules, document everything, and make reality do the talking.